Welcome to MezFi Meets, a podcast where we bring you conversations from the cutting edge of blockchain, AI, financial services, and property, with interesting people doing amazing things. I'm your host, Jerome and the CEO of MezFi. MezFi is an investment manager in Australia. If you'd like to find out more about us and our products, go to www.mezfi.com. On today's podcast, we interview Justin Maller, a pioneer in the digital art world who founded the Depthcore Art Collective. Justin has released a number of NFT collections in his own right, as well as partnering with Shaq on his first NFT drop. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking and subscribing. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey, it's MezFi Meets. Jerome and the CEO of MezFi, here today with Justin Maller. Justin, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today, mate. We've known each other a long time. I mean, 25 years almost, I think. I think it was, we met before this, but I always say the memory that I have of you is sitting on your couch in Melbourne, Australia, in Ackland Street, I think it was, in St Kilda, and watching you go to town on I don't think it was the LeBron James piece that you were showing me, but I always remember that LeBron James piece that was just so amazing, that he had signed and sent back to you.
I forgot about that.
And Justin, for those who are listening, is one of the most amazing digital artists, one of the OGs in digital art. And Justin, I'd be super interested to hear from you, and I hope our listeners would be too. Number one, on how you got into art and digital art, and also how you got into, because you're also an OG in the NFT space as a digital artist, how you got into the NFT and crypto world as well.
I think you're overselling my OG-ness a little bit on both fronts. You know, digital art certainly started. Well, look, digital art started a long time before I ever got into it, right? People were mucking around with computers way back when, 60s and prior. But when I think digital art really hit its stride when the internet came along, when those first communities were born online and you started to see artists meeting other artists. It's a pretty niche sort of a thing to get into in that late 90s, early 2000s kind of thing. So the internet was certainly a giant accelerator, Web 1, if you will, a giant accelerator for the medium of digital art. And it was certainly a big deal for me. I started screwing around in like 1998 with a pirated copy of Photoshop. Adobe love it when I tell that part of the story. By the way, that's their favorite.
Don't say it.
They know. I've worked with Adobe a bunch, over the years. So I just sort of started mucking around, and I got into it actually more initially from a design perspective, with no design education or design sensibilities. If I'm perfectly honest, like there's some people have a real predisposition towards design, but they have a very functional mind that thinks logically and cleanly. And I was just making junk. It was terrible, But I was interested in building websites, and I actually built a website with our friend Asaf Brukatz called Rock, which was like a precursor to Facebook. So this was in like 99 or 2000. We built it. You could log in. You created a profile. We had like a message board set up for just for our friends, right?
Cool.
Friends could log in, and the big thing we set up was you could plan parties and whatever. And then after the parties, you could upload photos and tell stories from the party. So, it was like if Facebook was made. Yeah, like if Facebook was made by teenagers with very limited vision, which is exactly what it was, right?
Yeah.
But so we, when I say upload photos, we were literally scanning photos, because that's what it was, scanning developed photos. And then I would take them into Photoshop and apply just dreadful filters to them. And that's sort of how I got started making digital art. But I loved it, and eventually, we got too busy with, final year of school to keep doing the website. But I sort of kept making digital art, and then I found DeviantArt, which was my last year of high school in 2001. Found, not founded. Important distinction.
Okay.
I discovered it. I was not part of the founding team. And I just loved it, seeing what everyone else was doing and what was possible. It just opened my eyes. And then instead of focusing on VCE, I just made a whole lot of terrible art for a long time.
It sounds like a very good life decision, actually.
It worked out, didn't it? But I mean, what are
Yeah.
the odds of it working out, really? Like that I fobbed off all that stuff to focus on making digital. Because there was no path. There was no path to success at that point,
But
or to a
especially, I mean,
career.
like let's just put it out here. Like for those who don't know, Justin went to what you would say is the most prestigious high school in Melbourne, Australia, Melbourne High, where I would say you were probably the only person who was into art. Like everybody else was into business and law and everything else, right?
I was beyond a minority at Melbourne High with my particular set of interests.
And when
Yeah,
I
put
say
it that way.
prestigious, we're not saying the most expensive. It's the hardest to get into because you need to pass an entrance exam, and it's a public school, but it's it's the best of the best and the brightest that go there, and you're there. Everybody else is focused on becoming the next Prime Minister of Australia,
Yep.
and you're focused on becoming the Photoshop, the face of Photoshop.
Yeah, that's really well put. That's exactly what my focus was. Yeah, you're right. Melbourne High churns out, incredibly. It's a school filled with very intelligent people and, some outliers, right?
No,
Um,
we won't say
and
that.
so yeah, people who come out of there do incredible things in the world of finance and science and research and politics and all sorts of amazing things. And I just I don't know what I was going to do, to tell you the truth, but I just got sidetracked hard by art. It was certainly not an expected outcome
Mm.
from from someone attending Melbourne High. It did work out in the long run, but like it really took a great deal of the kind of hubris you can only have when you're extremely young and dumb.
I mean,
You know, there's a
that's mostly the story, isn't it? You need to be naive enough to think that you can actually make it against all odds, don't you?
Yeah, it's a magical kind of arrogance that's the only thing that sort of facilitates you beating those odds.
Yeah.
You can't do it full of fear. You have to do it with cockeyed optimism. You like that?
Of which you certainly have a lot, and well warranted as well. So after you sidetracked yourself from
Studies.
from being the next Prime Minister of Australia, how did it go? Like, what did you do after you finished VCE, and were you just sitting on your couch making art? I mean, Deviant. You said Deviant. So Deviant is obviously something that you were in for a long time. At some points you ran, or you were the head of Deviant. Is that right, or not? I don't know.
Jerome, once again, you oversell me, my friend.
Maybe I
But hang
do.
on.
I don't know.
I was never the head of DeviantArt, but I will give it. All right, let's run through. Let's speed run a 20-year break to catch up from like this long tirade into me making photo bashes in 1999 through to when I discovered NFTs, which is where I'm sure we're going. Yeah, great. So started making all the art, loved doing it. I was doing a Bachelor of Creative Arts at Melbourne University. Bachelor of Creative Arts is fantastic because it eminently qualifies you to be a barista. There's just no better qualification you can have in the world of fine art coffee. Uh, but I was making art. I'd started an art collective called Depthcore, which was a big deal in a very micro niche culture for a
Yeah.
second. And then when I finished my degree, 2005, I started freelancing full time. Started out pretty slow, but things built up and ramped up. When I left Melbourne in 2009, I had, I'd done some work for a variety of clients, including like DC Shoes was one of the coolest and biggest clients I
Yeah.
had.
Awesome.
And through them, Brian Garofalo was their creative director. He introduced me to a man named Marco Scianini, who was the senior vice president at McCann Erickson. So McCann Erickson is the kind of advertising agency you hear when you watch Mad Men.
Yeah.
Like Don
Yeah.
talks about McCann. And they gave me the Verizon account, basically. I made all of the artwork
Wow.
for Verizon, which is a giant telco here in the States, for a year. And that was when I was about 25. So I
Cool.
moved to New York and made that entire year's worth of work. And that sort of set me up to have some confidence that this was really a direction that I could push in, because, there's some lean years before that. I was getting by a lot on small jobs, the kind of small jobs everyone starts out in the music industry and adjacent. And also I did a lot of writing for educational magazines like Computer Arts and things like that, which is how a lot of people learned how to use Photoshop, is they did tutorials that I wrote for them. And so I and other people like me, I wasn't the only contributor, obviously.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving forward, New York, great. The years went up and down in freelancing, as they always do. But I ended up working with pretty much everyone you can imagine, from Nike to, I did a great project with Gatorade, one with
Cool.
Google, LG, Under Armour. I mean, you name it. I got to do some great projects in my freelance career. Um, I along the way, during a very quiet year, I did a project called Facets, where I made a piece every day for a year.
Yes.
Over the course of doing that year's worth of work, I sort of stumbled into a new style of work, very geometric, very figurative, as opposed to the more abstract photo-based work I'd been doing prior. And that was great. Like, that was a bit of a career renaissance. I was able to move into some new directions, got a whole lot of new clients and what have you. And that took us through till about 2018, when I was hired to be the chief creative officer at DeviantArt. So that
Oh,
was a
wow.
big full circle moment for me, because DA was a huge deal. When I founded it in 2001, it was the big derailing. And I stayed close with the staff, especially Angelo, the CEO and founder of DeviantArt. And we stayed great friends. We went to Burning Man together, had a great time. And then one time we were on our way to the desert, and he said, I'd like you to consider joining the team. And
Wow.
so we had some conversations about it. So Angelo was always the CEO of DeviantArt when I was there. But I was the chief creative officer. So I certainly, I had a prominent role in the company, and it was a really big shift. And it was enjoyable. It was great, but it was really strange going from making art by myself in my studio in my house to, managing a couple of teams of people and having direct reports, and, it's just a very different way to live. It's a very different way to work. It's a very different mode of thinking, working with
Yeah.
a great executive team. We had a great team there. And then working with a whole lot of very talented people in marketing and design and studio and brand partnerships. It was fun, and it ended sooner than I thought it was going to. I was only there for about 3 years because of
Okay.
NFTs, actually.
Because of NFTs. Okay.
But yeah, it was a really really cool chapter. But that was the sort of DeviantArt full circle moment, where it all started off derailing me from whatever the hell it was I was going to do after Melbourne High. Um, Maybe act. Maybe I would have been an actor.
Maybe music, actually.
Well, I
I
wasn't good
know.
at music is the problem.
Oh, that is a big problem, unfortunately.
Not that I was
Uh,
good at acting either, but yeah.
there
We'll
may
see.
have been either of them. All right, so I mean, I think you probably undersell. Maybe I'm overselling you. Maybe you're underselling yourself. Let's meet somewhere in the middle. Um, but I mean, that takes us through to NFTs, and I mean, so that first Facets project, so that wasn't an NFT project, because I know you did the second Facets project was an NFT project, and that was
Yes.
more recent. So
Yes.
what was the first NFT that you made then?
Um, right. Well, hang on. I'll tell the whole story. So I started to see NFTs popping up on Twitter and Instagram throughout 2000. Like Blake Catherine, my friend, was doing some. So was Fuck Render, and like a few very prominent names like that. I started to see them and be like, okay, I see that this is happening on ETH, and I don't really know very much about it. Um, and then I saw it was, I think, September, October of 2000. So during the lockdown year, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Beeple had his first big day on Nifty Gateway, and he did about $3 million in one day that
Ooh,
day.
wow.
And I was like, all right, I need to know what the fuck this is. Like, this is, this is, there's clearly something happening here. That kind of momentum, like, it may not be recapturable, but it's certainly something I need to know about that's happening in digital art. Because, digital art is what I know. I've seen it through several different paradigm shifts over the years, from the beginnings on DeviantArt, a big paradigm shift when you saw Behance and Tumblr come along, more people,
Yeah.
get exposed to it, and then a much bigger shift with Instagram and Twitter. And this felt like it was perhaps one of those shifts as well, where there was going to be a big change in the perception of digital art, or in how many people knew about it, cared about it, and certainly with a $3 million a day, the way it was valued.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in a 15-year career of making digital art, I've done a lot of great projects. Some projects, especially when you're face forward, like when you're a part of the marketing of the project as a human being, as well as like the product, the art you make. You get treated like talent, but a lot of the time you get treated as production. You get treated like a plumber with a copy of Photoshop. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that, okay? Nothing wrong with being a tradesperson or whatever, but people are trying to bargain you down, and there's day rates, and there's this, that, the other. This, a $3 million day for people getting paid for making just artwork he already had. Like, this was a shift. Like, that's a paradigm shift. There's
That's
something
massive.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I looked into it. Talked with him about it a bunch, obviously congratulated him, waited an appropriate amount of time for someone who just made $3 million to calm down. And then,
Did you know him previously, or
oh,
were
yeah,
you...
yeah. So I've known Mike for years and years beforehand.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Actually, he knew of Depthcore, the art collective I mentioned earlier. It was a part of when he
Oh,
got
wow.
started. I have his book behind me. You can see it on the shelf right there. And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is he did a drawing that says Depthcore inside the book.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah, anyway. So yeah, I knew him. I wasn't just bothering him out of nowhere. He was like, "You got to do it." So I went to message Nifty Gateway on Instagram, and I saw that I'd missed a message from them 6 months earlier, inviting me to do a drop with them.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
You
unfortunately,
could have been people. There you go.
well, no, because he was a monster.
Yeah.
Like he was on that daily grind. He was, I have done dailies total for 2 years of my life. He's 15 years in.
He's done dailies for 15 years.
Yeah, that's his whole thing.
Man, that's incredible. I mean, I know that so his big piece that was 1,000 days of
yeah. More than 1,000.
The first 1,000 days, I think it's called. Is that what it was? The first 10,000 days.
10,000 is 30 years, so probably not. But
no, probably not. The first 1,000 days, I think it's called. Yeah.
Well, hang on, I've got the book here, so I don't know why. The first 5,000 days.
The first 5,000 days.
5,000 days. So 15 years. There you go. And as you see, Depthcore on the inside.
Depthcore.
Fascinating.
Amazing.
Podcast material for people listening as I show a book to the camera. Sorry about that. All right. Anyway, we are getting sidetracked. So called him, texted, whatever I did. Texted Nifty Gateway. They were very cool about me missing the text beforehand, and we set up for me to do a drop on the platform. Now, so Beep had his big day, and it was 3 million and whatever. But after that, there were plenty of like great artists who were having, they're having good days on there. It sort of settled into this groove where artists were doing sort of $20,000 at a time, 10, 50, something like that out of the drops, which is incredible still. Like,
yeah, to
make that kind of money just from, personal artwork where you're exploring your own stuff and it's not a co-branded experience. Like that's still a massive paradigm shift. So I got into, I said, sure, we agreed on a date. We agreed on a date for February 21.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, cool. So you asked what my first piece was. Well, it was for that drop. Thanksgiving 2020, I found out that so my mum had cancer, and I found out she wasn't gonna make it. So I had to come back to Australia. So Australia had those crazy quarantine laws where if you were coming back from overseas, they were going to lock you in a hotel room for 2 weeks.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't much fun. I'll give you the big tip. If your mum's dying, I don't think you want to spend 2 weeks of that time in a hotel room by yourself.
Definitely not.
Anyway, so I initially told Nifty, I said, I can't do the drop. Sorry, I've got to go take care of some shit. But I was like, fuck, I'm going to get locked in a room for 2 weeks anyway. I may as well take my art stuff. Yeah, exactly. So I did. They took me to the 42nd floor of the Hilton in Sydney and closed the door. It would open 2 more times, and there was going to be someone just sticking a swab up my nose. And what
a time! What a time!
Yeah, it's crazy. And I made this collection of art. It ended up being pretty on the nose. It's all set within a cube, and it ended up being honestly the most personal work I ever made. The experience of being trapped in a space while Mum was trapped in a space, and during a very charged, fraught, whatever adjective you want to use, time.
Yeah.
And I made nearly that entire collection in that hotel room by myself over the course of those 2 weeks.
Wow.
In between playing Pokemon for the first time and drinking a lot of cups of tea.
There you go.
So I came out of that. I got to see Mum before she passed. I spent some time with my family, with my sister and my dad and my stepmom, and then flew back to States, flew back to LA, and then a month to the day after Mum passed, that collection went live on Nifty Gateway, and it happened
Wow.
to be, the week that, the speculative nature of NFTs really went into turbo mode. So, I was going in with a financial expectation. I thought it was going to do pretty well. I thought,
Yeah.
30 or 40 grand, and it was, it was the to the moon week instead, which
Yeah.
was
Wow.
extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. I mean, being part of that movement at that time. So I wasn't in NFTs at that time, but I was around it, and the feeling from outside was just incredible. I can only imagine from your perspective, having actually, contributed to and being a part of that movement, and at that time, that would have just been amazing.
It was. It, it it was wild. That was a once in a lifetime experience having something like that happen. It was very briefly like being famous, where my phone was blowing up, like people I hadn't heard from in a long time, right? Sort of
Mm.
coming out of the woodwork to have a chat and have a chin wag. I can't tell you how many people I spoke to on the phone about how to get involved to NFTs and whatever. All of that was fine. There was just some other stuff that was a bit sus. But I was pretty traumatized. Like I had a crappy COVID. I was really brutal to myself and my wife with my paranoia about it because Mum was sick. I didn't know when I was going to have to go back home, so I couldn't
Yeah.
chance being sick when that was going to happen. And so, I was like Cloroxing the vegetables and shit. It wasn't healthy. So coming off of that, then coming into 2 weeks in the thing by myself, and then getting out of that to have the joyful experience of seeing my mum die, then coming home into this, and then having everyone who's ever known me like reaching out at once. It was
Very
truly
intense and overwhelming.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but exciting as well because all of this, like the thing that I put my whole adult life into was being looked at and appreciated and paid for in this like way that I'd never experienced before. Um, Overwhelming is the word because it encapsulates the excitement of it. It encapsulates the terror.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
mean, yeah. Certainly, I get overwhelmed in negative ways sometimes. But there's also that positive, overwhelming feeling, and it is a mixture of excitement, positivity, and trepidation as well. What was the name of that first collection so people can look it up?
the first one is called the Second Storm. You can find it on my website if you want to look for it, justinmaller.com. It's one of the first projects. But yeah, it's called that project. So I was in the Hilton on the 42nd floor, about I want to say a week into the quarantine, and Mum called me up and just said, Jazz, I don't think I'm gonna make it till you get out. And so I said, Mum, you do what you can do. I'll be here one way or the other. And that's we hung up. Pretty tough thing to hear. And then out of nowhere, this like giant mega storm rolled into Sydney, like just thunder and lightning and rain, just like out of nowhere, really quickly.
Yeah,
And I called her back and I said, "Mom, you should see this storm that just rolled in. Like I feel like something out there doesn't want you to go before I can say goodbye." And she just sort of laughed and said, "Okay, but I'll do my best." And she did. She held on till I got out. And I was visiting with her in the hospital that day. We went and got dinner at the RSL with my uncle and my stepmom and my dad and my sister. And during that dinner, we got the call that she'd gone, that she'd passed. And we went outside. We just paid the bill and ran, and went outside. And as soon as we stepped foot outside, it started fucking pouring rain, just like
second
thumping
storm.
rain on top of us. Second storm. Yeah. So called it the second storm.
Well, there's definitely something there, man. That feels wow. I can feel that now. Like that would have just been oh. But in a way, I don't know. I mean, I hadn't experienced loss until recently. My grandfather, or my grandmother passed away a couple of years ago. My grandparents sort of Sorry, I had experienced loss. Like my grandfather passed away when I was 12, but it was sort of like I was very young. And
Hmm.
then, my other three grandparents sort of passed away in the last few years.
I'm
And
very sorry.
no, I mean, it happens. They were quite old, but when people you love pass, and their memory is still very, very present with you. And there are those things which, make you question, like, where, I don't know about God and all that sort of stuff, but there's definitely things that make you question, you know, people's souls in the afterlife, things that make you feel their presence in a way that you don't just from normal feelings. You know what I mean? Like you saying about the second storm, it just feels, yeah, you can feel a connection there in some way. I don't know.
A connection's the right
Not
way to put it. No,
not
it's
to get not
interesting.
to get too deep or anything, but yeah,
No, I mean, that was my grandparents had passed before, and you have that level of experience. But people who are unfortunate to have lost someone in their immediate family close to them, it's a very unique pain, and
yeah,
you feel and find connections in places and through things that you're not expecting, and see signs and stuff, you know. And maybe it's just us constructing it to try and find them because we want to see them again. But maybe there's more to it. We don't know. We're puny four-dimensional beings. There's much we do not know.
yeah. No, in a multi-dimensional multiverse potentially as well. Who knows?
Exactly.
And I mean,
Exactly.
someone like yourself, who taps into that artistic, whatever it is in the ether. I mean, you'd feel it more than most, I guess. How unlimited the potential existence that we have is, even though we don't necessarily comprehend it. I think.
Yes and no. I mean, sometimes it's very rare that I've been able to see that and express that in artwork. And I'm, you know, I think lucky is the wrong word to use about a body of artwork you make while your mums die. But I was lucky to be able to tap into that and put that into that work because I haven't had that experience with very much other stuff I've made. That tapping feeling I felt a lot more with music than with visual art, to be honest, given the ephemeral physical nature of a musical performance as opposed to art. Podcasters, that was me doing a squinty face and typing at a keyboard
Yep.
to
Yep.
indicate
Yep.
not very physical movement. Anyway, look, I think people find that in all aspects of life. It's not just certainly not something simply reserved for artists. Uh, anyway, second storm. If anyone sees it and has any thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Amazing. Amazing. Um. So the second storm happened, and it went as better than you could have hoped.
Yes.
Um, from there, I know you worked with Shaq on, his NFT drop.
Hmm.
Was there other projects in between, or was it just you sort of dropping random pieces? What happened?
So I did over the course of my NFT career, I did a grand total of 5 projects, and that's it. And I'll
Hmm.
walk you through them sequentially. So the very first thing I put out was the Second Storm project. The next thing was the Shaq project, which was super fun. So I made Shaq's debut NFTs. It was an awesome project. We had a great deal of fun. I got to go out, hang out with the man, and record some videos, and we had a really cool bond. We had a really good time. And
So
that
cool.
project was a success. Nick Rose and the team at Eternity did a really great job promoting that project and seeing it through to completion. And Shaq's team at Authentic Brands were excellent to work with. That was a really enjoyable project. And for me, that was the kind of thing I was like, okay, I can see a vision for this kind of thing as NFTs move forward. Like there's something to this that makes sense in a scalable way outside of an independent sort of art market. You know what I mean? Like a speculative art market on a consumer end. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. After that, I put out a project called In Waves, which was a follow-up to the Second Storm. It came out very late in 21. and was just sort of an explore. I kept it pretty heavy, to be honest with you. Like it was an exploration of grief and what that process had been like, of losing a parent after a traumatic period like that, and then also having the heat of thousands of people screaming at me for utility from my first drop. That I was pretty clear about what it was. It was a project I made, under duress during a difficult time, and had no idea thousands of people were going to buy into it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I made In Waves was a collectors only sort of a project. It wasn't like a big earning project. It was mainly there to reward collectors. And then the next project I did was called Shrines, which was also collectors only, because a lot of people were screaming at me to do a burn from that first project I did, because the open editions sold in such large volume. And obviously I didn't want to burn those pieces. They were, quite personal, and it didn't feel right to associate that with the subject matter of the collection. So
Yeah.
I offered to allow them to trade me back any three of those open editions, and I would give them one of these shrines. So I thought that was a cool way of doing it. And then we sent the shrines to a locked wallet, where they could never be bought or sold or traded or whatever, all the open editions. So they all got taken off the market without being burnt. So reducing supply without bringing the concept of burning to a very personal collection of work.
Mm.
And then the fifth and final project was facets. So, I mentioned earlier I did a year's worth of work, made a piece every day. And I got together with Manifold, a wonderful team, to build out facets too. And we built out this new platform with a whole lot of awesome NFT mechanics in it, stuff that no one has done again, to this stuff that people do every day now that no one had done before we did it, and stuff that no one has still done to now, which is pretty cool. So we spent about 6 months concepting that and building that, and unfortunately mistimed the market. I got lucky the first time, so I can't complain, but
That's
we did
it.
not get lucky second time, and that's just the nature of the beast. As we launched this in summer of 22, which many people listening will have some bad memories of.
Yeah. I mean, that's is that FTX times, or is that Luna, Terra Luna, around that sort of time?
I don't remember the exact time. I actually think that they were later somehow. It was just like crypto just died. I don't think it was actually t tied to a fail. It was
Yeah.
just macroeconomic conditions tied in with just some other stuff, and the wind went out of the sails, and ETH dropped down below $1,000.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I've obviously seen that second facets collection, and I was watching you drop each of the pieces as they were going, and I love a lot of them, and the that way that you sort of went, like you said previously, from more the photo sort of way towards that geometric thing. I really loved that thing, and you go to your website. Obviously, there's just so many amazing pieces there. I mean, that's a good segue, I guess, because your art, because it's digital, um, it exists on a computer, and but it's created by a human, and we're in this sort of age now of Mid Journey and ChatGPT, art creation. I mean, how does that feel for someone like you who has made a career in developing your artistic talent? And then, you've got people who are coming along and trying to, or maybe not trying to do anything really, but, the technology, do you feel that it's supplanting, replacing, augmenting maybe the artistic process?
It's such a big topic. It's hard to know how exactly to attack it first. Um, because, okay, I think that for my industry, for people who are trying to be a professional digital artist, I think that AI is going to be tremendously harmful.
Mm,
Um, it's not a lot of people when they discuss the validity of AI, they're talking about, well, it was this hard for me to make it, so it should be this hard for you to make it too.
yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, not a valid reason. Okay. Tools will always evolve.
Yeah.
Things will always get easier to do, and it allows you to explore beyond that and find newer ways to do it. That's not a valid response to say it was hard for me, so it should be hard for you. Okay, that's not valid. What is valid to say is that these tools exist because they were trained on data sets that were unethically scraped of people's life's work
True.
without their permission and without them benefiting from it to create a tool that is now capable of performing whatever it is it can perform in a way that will take work away from the people whose data sets were scraped. And that is such a flawed ethical principle to begin with that it's difficult to talk about the rest of it with a straight face.
That's really interesting. I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like too few people do, because with such a flawed ethical premise, the nuanced level of conversation about whether it's a tool or whether it's, and then you can get into the highfalutin part of it, which is no, the human touch is what is important, and people will always, yeah, good, great. It doesn't matter. The ethics of this are corrupt.
Yeah.
And here's what's the ultimate upshot of this is going to be that we were discussing before what my journey was in digital art. And I told you I got started off doing, low-paying work for tens or hundreds of dollars in the music scene adjacent, right? DJs, flyers, album covers, magazine editorial pieces,
Yep.
whatever. That's the first rung on the ladder to being able to become a professional artist, right? For anyone, there's always these low-paying, small-time jobs that are below it's a rung below being paid properly for your work. But it's where you
Yeah.
start and where you get your foothold, develop your skill, and start to be able to support yourself to move up, both professionally and in terms of skill. That rung is gone now because
Mm.
people will be using Midjourney to create way better work than people would be able to, to produce who are willing to take that level of pay.
Yeah.
So that's gone. And, at this point, people will often argue, yeah, but there's people out there who really appreciate that human touch. Well, do you know something? Really, really soon, you're not going to be able to tell whether that human touch is there or not, because
No.
AI is, if you look at the advancements AI has made over the last few years, it's not learning like a human does, where it's like, wow, he got a lot better between 15 and 16. It's like,
No,
it's
it's
quantum
exponential.
leaps.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
exponential, exactly, because that's how AI learns.
Yep.
And soon that'll be gone. And what you're going to see is more and more rungs on that ladder being removed until you're left with people who are already established in the industry, where what they create is also tied to themselves as a creator, and having them like associated with the project is what is bringing value to it more than the output.
Yep.
But that's an entire industry that you've decimated.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to do that. Those rungs are going to continue to be removed. So the last time that this happened on a scale like this was the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
okay, where machines were invented and people whose jobs had been to till the field were displaced from their profession of harvesting, okay.
Yep.
But the upshot of the Industrial Revolution were advancements in the day-to-day quality of life that enabled us as a society to pursue education, pursue higher education, develop medicine, science, art,
Mm.
yes? A
Yeah.
much higher standard of living for everyone involved, because all of a sudden we weren't required to be in the fields subsistence living and subsistence farming.
Yeah.
Please explain to me how this AI revolution in displacing artists from their job is creating a better quality of life for us as a species.
Certainly not. I don't see any positivity in terms of the overall quality of life for anyone really from that. What you're saying actually it actually reminds me. I can't remember who exactly it was who was saying it. It may have been Bill Gates, but I think it was someone else who was talking about the way overvalued and overhyped valuations on AI adjacent or related companies at this stage. I mean, specifically, obviously, they're talking about Nvidia, and I think I'm not quoting verbatim here. It's a paraphrase, but it was something like, point to me something that you and your company uses AI for that's actually beneficial for your top line, your bottom line, anything at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And there is next to nothing at the moment that you could say, oh yes, this AI has made my life infinitely better in this way. The AI has done this for me. The valuations and the value that we're putting on it certainly feels like a bubble. You know what I mean?
I do. I do know what you mean. And yet I can see application for AI in non-displacing ways, where it can
Mm.
be used as a tool to analyze data in a way that we're incapable of doing at the moment, and then extrapolate from that methods of moving forward. It's like in medicine, for example, like how much research could be advanced. You know, you're not displacing medical researchers. There's never going to be enough, like, you know, we're never going to solve medicine. We're never going to
No.
solve science. There's always going to be things to learn, and having something that can learn in that quantum exponential way is helpful in those fields because it allows people to build on top of that.
Yep.
It's different specifically in art, where you are replacing that output and relying on companies to value a human touch instead. Like
Mm.
the thing that's I'm coming back to my point from before, and then I'm going to come to yours, which is that the ultimate beneficiaries of AI movement in the creative space are going to be the people who are making the AI tools, again, based on the life's work and output of uncredited, unpaid, unconsenting artists.
Mm.
And so they're going to benefit hugely from the valuations of their companies. And then that's going to trickle on to the major companies who are no longer going to pay artists to create their their campaigns or their
Yeah.
spec art. Like when you look at how movies get made and the amount of artwork that gets made, as previs stuff before anything gets done, that industry is swear worded.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can swear or not, but they're
Swear.
stuffed.
Who
How about,
cares?
right, well, they're fucked. They are proper fucked.
Yeah.
And the concept art industry is really taking it in video games and in movies and in everything. And who's saving the money there? It's top end
Yeah.
savings while the creative class suffers. And
It's very
so yeah,
interesting.
can
Well,
there
it's
be an
not interesting.
application for
It's devastating actually.
well for this industry, yes. In other industries, potentially extremely exciting as AI is able to perform functions that it's not benefiting anyone to do right now, right? Anyway, so that's where I'm at on AI. I've seen people use it as part of their artistic process where they're training Stable Diffusion on their own work. Obviously, incredibly ethical. It's your own work,
Yeah.
and then you're creating outputs you weren't able to do before. That's a tool. That's not how it's broadly being used. That's not the existential threat to the industry that I'm talking about.
No, totally. And going back to that point about the unethical scraping of data. I mean, sorry, it's not data in this case. It's work. Um, I mean, there's a potential class action lawsuit there waiting to
Mhm.
happen
Oh, it's
against
already
the.
happening.
Oh,
Carla
it is.
Ortiz is suing a whole bunch of people.
Well,
Um,
it kind of feels like Metallica versus Napster, doesn't it?
it does. It does. With
Not in the
the
same way because Metallica versus Napster had a flavor of you know you've made a lot of money and you don't want the small guys to be able to benefit. There was a slight poor taste in what Metallica did, but at the same
that was a
time,
Goliath and David thing, whereas this is more of a David and Goliath thing, where
yeah,
it's about the
exactly.
power imbalances. The one thing you have to say is that Metallica kind of weren't wrong.
They weren't wrong
Like,
in any way, shape, or form,
yeah,
and where we are today shows that. I mean,
yeah.
Spotify, they are a-holes. Actually, hold on a second. I think we're going to be on Spotify. Spotify, great. Um, no, but they are. I mean, like, let's be honest about this. I mean, I don't know if you saw this. Snoop Dogg came out and said, I've got 1 billion streams on Spotify. Let me show you the check, and it was like $150,000. Um, you know what I mean? Like you're making peanuts now. And Napster was very much that first sort of rung on the ladder, so to speak, towards the devaluation of rights for artists to get paid. Obviously, in the music industry, a lot of it was, the recording labels that were getting undercut because obviously the recording labels make them the vast majority of the money in the recording industry.
Hmm.
And I think very deviantly so Spotify and these platforms touted themselves as more of a oh well, we can directly to the artist can directly get paid, and that very much hasn't happened. So
It's been, look, I'm not honestly well enough educated on it to speak on it, but it's been interesting seeing what was clearly a bloated industry in the recording industry previously. You know, when you look at the excess and whatever that was involved in that, have that money trickle away from that side of things and onto the platform distributor side of things instead. And who knows what, look, who knows what the actual logistics involved in delivering that kind of music to that many people and what it is. But Spotify's valuation is certainly high and they seem to have cash on hand. So,
yeah, very much. But
but this is
sorry,
what
so
happens
that's
when you create a monopoly, I guess.
yeah, true, exactly. I mean, so that's a bit of a divergence though. But so on the art topic, yeah, that's just it's distressing. And so you were saying that they are actually there is a class action lawsuit
Oh,
that's
yeah.
happening right now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Carla Ortiz is leading it. She's worth a follow on Twitter if you're interested in this kind of thing. Very
For sure.
eloquent voice, a real leader in that particular space and the stance that she's taking. I'm not willing to suffer the aggravation of discussing this stuff publicly anymore. Like I'll talk about it here, but I'm not writing back to anyone on Twitter anymore about this sort of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe I should, but I've had conversations with people who are involved in doing or not doing AI on platforms, and I've voiced my opinion, and that's about the best I can do is sort of approach it from that top end. Not that I was heard, but I did speak.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, look, you need a number of voices to speak. I think in order to be
Mm.
heard, and potentially action needs to be taken. And Carla seems that she's doing something good. And I mean, look, from my perspective, I think I'll admit I have used AI tools with artwork generation at times, and found it to be an interesting place. But with that knowledge of the scraping, it really puts a totally different spin. You've really opened up my mind to that actually, because I really didn't even think about that. And because it's funny that you say that. It's not funny. It's horrendous actually. When when I was using Midjourney in the first instance, or using ChatGPT's photo generation thing, I used to think to myself, okay, so how does it work here? Is it taking pieces of art that it has in its bank and just putting it together, or is it drawing something, or is it like, what exactly is it doing? And to think about it from that perspective, where it's just scraped everything and then it's just either replicating it or even piecing it together. Either way, yeah, it feels really devious, to be honest.
It's not good. It's profoundly not good. And so that's whenever this conversation comes up, that's where I think the conversation begins and ends because the rest of it is semantics.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's a
Um,
100% true. It's 100% true. Yeah, it's IP theft. Like that's essentially what it is. Let's be honest.
yep, it really is. But with billions and billions of dollars at stake somehow.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and look, the thing that makes me sad about it is, look, I'm sure there's people out there who can poke holes in my comparison of this to the Industrial Revolution or whatever, but I just don't see how anyone in this industry benefits from it, and like what great benefit really there is to like just everyday end consumers who are listening to this. It's going to be it's going to be billionaires. It's going to be people who are running gigantic companies who are going to see the ultimate difference here, one way or another, who are going to save money and make money. And it's going to be everyday people who get screwed. And a lot of it is going to come through indifference, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Well, look, I mean, I'll give. Is it Tita? Is it what was her name? Sorry, Rita.
Carla
Carla
Ortiz.
Ortiz. Sorry,
Yeah.
bad short-term memory,
Oh,
short-term
good.
memory loss. Carla Ortiz. I'll give her a follow, and I'm going to be reading up on that. That's definitely a cause worth fighting for. That's amazing.
Hmm.
Um, Amazing. All right. Well, look, I think we're almost out of time at this point. Justin, I've really enjoyed, as I always do, talking with you about art, talking with you about those years back 20 years ago, in St Kilda and everything in between. I wonder if you'd be so kind, and we're talking about obviously the art industry at the moment, the digital art industry, and I'm sure there are still a lot of people who want to become digital artists and have that sort of passion. So I wonder if you'd be able to give our listeners today 3 tips, or your 3 best tips on how to become an artist, or even just a digital artist, whatever you sort of feel is where you can give the best insight.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to become a digital artist after the last 15 minutes of conversation?
That's it.
What an exciting and viable field to throw yourself into. Okay, look, the number one thing is always to make work. It's to make a lot of work. The best growth I've ever seen was during my year-long daily projects, because when you create in a focused way like that with accountability and as a specified outcome, which is there's a piece per day, and you hold yourself accountable to that. That's a
Yep.
great way just to experience growth and to get better. So make work. It's going to take a long time, especially if you're just starting out, for the quality of your output to match up to your taste. Your taste is going to be much better than your skill is capable of producing. And the more time you spend working on that skill consecutively, the sooner it'll catch up to your taste. And then your taste will evolve and the journey continues. That's the life of an artist. So number one, make a lot of artwork. Number two, I think we need to really work on soft skills like talking to people. It's the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know, is not 100% accurate, but most creative fields do have an aspect of that. So having good relationships with people. I hate the word networking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about getting to know people, being interested in what they're doing, being, having a stake in their success, and then they have a stake in your success. And you have people that you can rely on and depend on and pay favors forward to each other. And it's really key to surviving in what can be a lonely industry, because a lot of the time, especially as an artist, you'll be solo unless you're in a studio.
Yep.
So network is not the word, community is the word. And you get community by being able to go out, hold your end of a conversation. And I guess tangential to that, the third one is, you can never put too much time into the first third and the third of a creative process. The first third is conceptualizing, is designing and thinking about what you're going to do and how it's going to be executed. The second phase there is actually doing it. And the third phase is marketing it, is taking it out to market and talking about it, and not being afraid to blow your own horn, bring yourself and your project into the spotlight in whatever channels you can find to explore. Too often, true artists get completely immersed in the first 2 phases and ignore the third. And frankly, a lot of the most successful artists in the world are all about the third act. Being able to market well, to market yourself well, and also to develop those soft skills I was talking about. Those are the kind of people who succeed in other industries, people
Yep.
who are capable of building, for them, network, not community, and who are not afraid to tout their own virtues. That's how you succeed, and you can't be afraid to do that as an artist. So make a lot of art, make a community. Don't be afraid of marketing. Those are my 3 big tips. If you still want to get into making art after listening to me spend 20 minutes talk to you about how AI is destroying the industry.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, when I was young, someone told me, and I know you said before about becoming a barista, and be, a creative arts degree being good for being a barista. I mean, I was a barista when I was young, and someone told me, the last thing you ever want to do is to get into cafes. And I enjoyed myself a lot, when in that industry. I ended up roasting coffee and having cafes and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure for those who have the bug, a little bit of theft and AI isn't going to stop them, and your tips are going to be super helpful for sure.
Oh, you're quite
Um,
right. Hang on, let me chuck a fourth one on real quick just before
yeah,
we
go.
wrap it, okay? Because I'm not trying to shit on baristas with that comment I was making earlier.
No, I know you weren't. I know you weren't.
When I started out making digital art, when I was writing for those magazines and making pieces for DJs, I worked in a mobile phone store. Not a glamorous job, you know,
Yep.
no, certainly no better than being a barista where you're supplying delightful coffee to the world, right? But that's a good tip is that like you need to have the humility to do what it takes to build your passion here. So I held on to that job where I worked in the store and signed people up for mobile phones until I really knew that I was secure enough to just make a living from art. So, you know, having that element of realism about it is always going to be good in any creative industry where you do what you need to do to make ends meet and take the pressure off having to do it all through art before you're ready to. So there you go. I also wanted to just not shit on baristas. I love baristas.
Yeah, no, I mean, we
And
all
there's
do, right?
no shame in doing that while you're starting. No shame in doing that at all at any
No,
point.
no, exactly, exactly. No, I totally agree. And one last thing before we sign off, I just want to mention just briefly, the MezFi NFT collection, or we can't call them NFTs. They're actually DFTs, but
DFTs, love
they're
it.
amazing art that you developed for MezFi. We could probably do a whole sort of podcast just on that. But I wanted to say thank you for amazing work in that respect, and just ask, I guess, in that sort of pantheon of your journey, because obviously you went from that photorealistic sort of and not photorealistic, but photo work to the geometric work, and with MezFi, it's sort of that it's inspired a bit more by by buildings. I think when we were talking about it, I was sort of saying, I really like this monolithic thing, and we started from the geometry. I remember you sending me, the five different shapes? Yeah, five different. You used a word. I can't remember what the word is for those shapes. It was like the cube, the thing. There's a word for it that you
Oh, it's a
used.
platonic, right?
The
Is that the
five
word that
platonic
you?
shapes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And we ended up going with the cube, or the whatever it's called. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to sort of get your take on where that sits in your sort of journey before we sign off.
I loved the project we did together. And let's commend you for being a patron of the arts and hiring an actual artist to conceptualize and develop and execute a full-fledged series of art. I think it shows in the quality of the product that you've produced to visually represent the DFT and the great idea that you have with MezFi. So shout outs to you for doing that.
Appreciate it.
I had a great time building it with you, man. I had a great time exploring it and showing off the different things we can do. So in 3D, platonics refer to different amounts of surfaces on an object. So a tetrahedron is triangular looking, and icosa is more circular, and then you have basically a cube. And we have an elongated cube that is indeed a monolith looking thing, and it is very architecturally inspired. As the mezzanine part of mezzanine finance has an architectural connotation. It was super fun to explore that architectural influence and bring that into my own visual language and interpret that through this quite basic geometry to create something that was we wanted to create something that was ownable and iconic for MezFi. And I'm sure people have their own opinions on the artwork, but the one thing I think you'll be able to say is that there's not a lot of stuff out there that looks like it. Like that belongs to MezFi. That is MezFi's art style, and yeah, it was a great project. I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really enjoyed working with you on it as well, and I'm really excited. We're very close to launching, so we'll be able to share that amazing journey and that artwork that you created for us and for eventually our holders too, really soon. So I'm super excited about that, and yeah, I really enjoyed catching up today again. And mate, have a great day, and I really hope to catch up again really soon.
Hell yeah, mate. Thank you very much for having me. It was a great chat. Best of luck with MezFi. I'll be keeping a close eye on it for sure.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, dude. Cheers.
You too, mate.
Thanks for watching. If you want to find out more about MezFi, go to www.mezfi.com. Follow us on X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can see our shorts there, and look forward to the next conversation, and see you then.